Ciao bueno.
Ciao. We
Ciao.
ran a poll a month ago, or I ran a poll,
Yeah.
I guess, soliciting feedback on this idea that we had. Um, the idea is, would you be interested in a starter kit expansion that adds optional rules? Keep that in mind. These are all optional that allow you to play some or many full ASL scenarios and/or give SK players, designers more variety options and/or act as a means to transition to full ASL and/or possibly introduce limited French/Finn orders of battle. I think that would be a last thing.
Yeah.
And we had about 200 votes, and 86% said yes. I assuming that everyone who voted here is a starter kit player. Um, and
You would think so, but
you
yeah.
would think, but there may be some ASL players that voted. So, but in general, 86% said yes, 11% said nah, 3% said depends, and they would post a comment. We didn't get many comments on it. Uh, this guy said there are 5 different questions. That is true. In response to the first 3, seems like just buying the full rulebook and using rules like spring fire, op fire, bypass, and overrun would do the job. Yes, but why should you be required to buy the full system and read, the full rules to get the flavor of the rule? The idea is to take the ASL rule and SKize it, starter kitize it, make it simpler and easier to read, kind of like what they did with starter kit rulebook.
Yeah.
However, an expansion that adds some new counters like heat of battle or snipers would be nice in response to the last 2, sort of, and not especially. Okay. I've heard people pining for the French or in starter kit.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I hear starter kit players, wanting more of everything, but uh, yeah,
Do
I don't know.
they? Do they? But I don't think they want to go overboard. I think they want some more, but they also don't want to, go crazy with it. That's the idea here, is to
Well,
give them some of the essentials that give more flavor to the game.
yeah, there's a lot of SK players that are just happy with
Yeah.
SK.
Hmm.
And they probably just the way it is now, right? So they may want more content, but they don't necessarily want to start throwing in the full ASL stuff,
Right.
making it any more complicated than it already is.
But there are some rules, I contend, that should have been put in starter
Right.
kit
Hmm.
that aren't. They don't add much complexity, and I'll show you one example here in a bit. But I think they're essential to the way the game would be played. And that example is bypass movement, and I'll show you that here in a minute. This guy says, I've already made the transition more or less, so this isn't necessarily as relevant to me anymore, but I do think this would be a fantastic idea for people who are hesitant to invest so much money into ASL, basically. That's the idea, is to give them either, again, these would all be optional rules. You wouldn't have to use any of them if you didn't want to, right? Or you could use them piecemeal. So if you wanted to design a scenario that just had snipers in them, then you just, in the SSRs, you just put sniper rules, whatever section starter kit it is, are in effect, and you read the sniper rules, right? It wouldn't
Hmm.
necessarily have to be everything that would be added. They would all be the optional rules. George says a better approach is to treat the 2 games as distinct rather than a transition between one and the other. Adding optional rules and the like will end in a pitfall the original classic game fell into. Well, that's not true, because in the original game, the rules were only optional in that you were required to read them if you wanted to progress in the game. These rules would be 100% optional.
Well, that's the thing. I think it's like we just talked about. There's kind of two different ideas. It's like some people are happy with the way starter kit is. They don't want it any more complicated. But there's other people that are using it or playing it like it was designed for, as a springboard or to help you learn full ASL, right? So
Hmm. Francisco, I guess, says, I translated it. This is like finding a way to eat meat as a vegetarian. That's an odd analogy, but okay.
It could be your translation.
I don't know. Something maybe lost in translation.
Well,
Sure
yeah, I
enough.
mean, I had to learn ASL the hard way, so, part of me that doesn't wanna make learning ASL any easier for anybody, but yeah.
Yeah, I know there might be, I mean, there might be people who are resistant to this. They would just say, just either play starter kit or play full ASL. Don't have anything in between, but
Right.
life isn't
Well,
black and white. It's not binary. There's always gray areas, right?
there's gotta be that group of, SK players that, are thinking about transitioning to full ASL, but then they don't know, maybe they're not sure. Well, if you had something that would give you a taste of it, more
Mhm.
of a taste, I guess,
Yeah.
you know,
Yep.
then I don't know. Yeah.
Or maybe not even a taste. I've seen people that say, well, I want to play this ASL scenario. Uh, can I play it with starter kit rules? Because
Right.
there's only,
Well,
I
yeah.
mean, starter kit's been out for 20 years, I think. About 20 years. Starter kit one, and then so on. 20 years. There's only 100 scenarios for starter kit. Let that sink in. 100 scenarios
Yeah.
over 20 years.
I know there's not a lot of
There's
content.
not a lot of content. Starter kit. I mean, MMPs realized. I think they've realized that. I think they believe starter kit was going to be a transition game to ASL. People would buy it and then leave it behind. But I think they found that isn't true. There are people that are perfectly happy there.
Yeah.
And I believe all the scenarios I've designed up to this point have all been starter kit because ASL does not need any more scenarios. I know that there are great designers out there doing really cool stuff, but I mean there are thousands of scenarios, and if you count in third party, there's probably 100 historical modules that you can play. There's just so much, and I think starter kit
Yeah.
needs a little love, to be
Yeah.
honest.
We've been talking about it quite a bit the last 6 months or so, and yeah, I'm the same way. It's like if I'm going to design a scenario, it's going to be a starter kit
Hmm.
scenario because uh, like you say, they need more content. So
Needs more love. But I think MMP's starting to realize it because the magazine's coming out this year, maybe, hopefully. The Marco Polo Bridge SK version is coming out. They're working on some kind of Stalingrad adaptation starter kit project. And there might be something else I'm forgetting, but that's after a drought of how many years, since Decision at Elst. And they occasionally
mhm.
have a starter kit expansion pack, but there's not been a lot of content for starter kit. But there's more
I think,
more
yeah,
seems to be in the pipeline.
yeah. I think part of their problem is probably they don't really do much of the actual designing, so
Right.
they
Yeah.
need stuff submitted to them.
I
But
think Ken is their kind of
yeah,
their main designer.
he's.
So I think they only publish as much as submitted and fits into their schedule, and people don't submit a lot of starter kit stuff. So
I think Ken is designing scenarios in his sleep. That's
I
all I
think
can
so
think
too.
of.
Like every starter kit scenario I see, it's like Ken done, Ken done. Yeah,
Well,
guys,
full ASL too. Yeah,
yeah, guy's a machine. But yeah, so
the little isn't the didn't he do the little in the new special ops mag the
yeah,
little mini
the
historical thing? Those are all his.
Lysianka, Ukraine. Yeah, I think he did that too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's just pumping it out. His machine.
So here's the general idea, the design document. And the reason Scott and I are talking about this and asked the question is we're going to need help with this, specifically with proofing the little rule sections that are written and playtesting the scenarios that are designed. We can't do everything ourselves, right? So whenever there's something that is designed that's beyond just a single scenario, there's usually people involved behind the scenes that contribute and help with it. So that's why we're kind of talking about this to show people what we're thinking and kind of give them a heads up that we'll be asking for help later on. But the gist of it is there's going to be about I hit the wrong button. There it goes. There's going to be maybe 12 scenarios um, that add kind of a program instruction type of idea to building the scenarios from a rule set point of view. There's going to be some infantry based ones, then add some ordnance on top of infantry, and then the whole thing vehicle, ordnance, and infantry. Um, and then there might be two scenarios that include the whole gamut of optional rules, and maybe one mini historical that uses most of the rules. And then I have the idea, and this would have to be something that MMP would decide on. And this is going to be attempted to be submitted to MMP sometime down the road if and when we finish it. To include reprints of curated classic full ASL scenarios, right? Some of them exist out there uh, that could be played that aren't overly complicated. In other words, they don't have things like, pillboxes or optional rules that aren't added.
Right.
But, you know, bypass would be impactful, snipers would be impactful, maybe vehicle bypass would be impactful to those scenarios. And they would include those full ASL scenarios in this pack as well. I mean, they've already been published. I don't see why they couldn't just include them in here as a bonus type of thing.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, in order for this idea to work, you're going to need some counters.
Yeah,
So,
depending on which optional rule is added, you might need some counters. Yeah. hmm At the bottom here, I have 1 to 2 counter sheets, depending.
yeah.
2 to 4 boards, new boards, geo boards, and maybe a small HSL map. I don't know. That's just a question mark. And then the rules would come in a optional rule pamphlet, right? I mean, some
Yeah.
war games do this. They kind of have a core rule. I think BCS does this. They have their core rules, and then when a new module comes out, they have kind of not optional, but specific for that game, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a series game, so you have the series rules,
hmm
which are just across the board, and then you have each module has its own game rules.
Right. This would have an optional rules pamphlet that would have optional rules, and it may be different than that, but that's the idea. And the rule
Yeah,
set would be, yeah.
you wouldn't need like the full SK rulebook included in this necessarily. So,
Yeah, well, no, I would assume not because the assumption is
right.
if you're getting this, then you know the starter kit system. You wouldn't be diving into these optional rules unless you had the system, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
So
an
this,
add-on.
yeah, this wouldn't be a self-contained type thing. It would be an add-on. And the rules set would be SK style rules that you're used to seeing in the SK rulebook. Um, Let me show you what. Oh, it's up here. So this is the current revision of the bypass movement rules, and you can see here it is essentially one column if you leave out the examples. Okay. At the top, you have an overview of what bypass movement is. So overview is, maybe I should zoom in a little bit. Oh, too much, too much. So the overview for this optional rule section, in this case, would be only buildings and woods can be bypassed. Only 1 or 2 connected hex sides. The cost is the cost of terrain outside the obstacle, which is usually 1 movement factor, usually open ground. Uh, Defensive first fire line of sight is checked to the bypass vertex, which is in detail below, and then bypass or residual firepower is placed as normal. That gives us kind of a summary of what's contained, and then the rules. Again, it's like SKI's rules, simple to read, um, are laid out here for bypass movement. And bypass movement is essentially one column with 2 examples. That's it.
Yeah.
And if people want to pause this and read it, if you can, feel free to do that. But this is the idea that each rule section is going to try to be 1 page. Optional will be 1 page. Some may be a paragraph. Like I think I have an armor leader section, which is basically a paragraph. Armor leaders are really easy for an optional rule. But this is the idea. This is kind of what each section would look like.
Cool.
Okay, and then I just have just a few of the map concepts I've whipped up so far uh, for people to look at. They can post in the comments, tell us what they think. This is I'm just calling this one Bocage 1. I was afraid this would be a little too busy. Feels a little busy to me, but I don't know. These can be changed, obviously. But we need boards to introduce some of these concepts, like hedges and walls. They were introduced in uh, Beyond the Beaches. Is that what it was?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would include that rule section in here, but there would be uh, boards that highlight walls and hedges type of thing, and maybe bocage. So this would be a board for that. This is bocage 2. I think I toned the hedges bocage down a little bit for this one. Has a hill because there would be advanced elevation, so I've introduced hills into some of these. Well, hills beyond level 1 for starter kit.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's too many, especially SK boards or even full ASL boards that really represent like the Normandy hedgerow country very well.
I don't know. There's some that attempt to. I mean, I don't know
A
how.
little, yeah,
I mean,
a little bit, but
it's an abstraction, but that's the focus of these two boards are kind of bocage country. And then this is just a general, ETO type board, buildings, some woods and a hill type of thing. Got some walls. Paths would be introduced. Paths is basically a paragraph. Very easy. There's lots of paths on some of the full ASL boards. ETO2, a little more hills here. Got a level 2 on a couple of them. Another path up there. ETO3, even more hills.
cool.
This would be, I guess, kind of analogous to board 3, kind of,
Hmm.
uh, from old school ASL. Got some hills going on there. Path again. This is just a general ETO. Woods, fields, hedges, brush. This is something new to play on because even the number of boards for starter kit is pretty limited. I mean, you and I have been designing some
Hmm.
some scenarios and trying to put a setup together with the boards available is kind of challenging.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then this is just like a village board, I guess. Well, these are my first pass, so I mean, I could probably go, oh, that's top secret. Don't look at that.
Yeah.
It's just in the same directory. I don't know. I haven't figured out what to do with this. I could show it, I guess. It's probably too complex for this.
For SK, probably.
Yeah, because of a lot of elevation. There's gullies, there's embankment rules I'm gonna write. This was for a historical module I was fiddling with a while ago for in Sicily, Altavia. Probably too complex for this. Maybe I'll cut this section out of the video. I don't know. I was just in the same directory. Okay. Yeah, maybe I'll leave it in. I don't know. Yeah, so that's it for the idea. And I showed you just this one rule section. I have several other already written up for snipers. I have a sniper rule set written up. I have a miscellaneous rule set up, written up that's got fanaticism in it and armor leaders and very just small sections,
So
very
when
small.
so what you're doing is you're basically like the bypass rules. You're taking the full ASL bypass rules and kind of stripping them down,
Yeah, yeah.
just so there's nothing. So it's just it all pertains to SK. Like so, there's nothing
Well,
that you don't.
yeah, but I'm stripping out some stuff. So if you look at, let's just zoom in on this one down here, this example. I mean, one of the things in bypassing full ASL is you can bypass more than 2 hex sides. So this American unit, if he came up to this hex and then bypass on this side, he could actually bypass around like this into I3
Hmm.
by paying 1 extra movement point or movement factor. And it kind of complicates the concept a little bit because there's circumstances where that would happen is probably very few. Because to get to I3, you could just bypass this side for
Right.
2. So why would you ever do that? I don't think I've ever used it bypass 3 for an extra movement factor, movement point. No, movement factor. Jeez. So I strip things like that out that I don't think are used very often and kind of overcomplicate the rule, which isn't that difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Same with sniper. I strip some stuff out that is is like extra chrome. It's like chrome on chrome.
Hmm.
Doesn't happen very often, so there's no real need to. And starter kit as it is now does that. It strips out extraneous stuff that doesn't happen often and isn't really used.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it. That's the idea. That's the concept. Again, none of it is required. It's all optional for people who just want to expand their starter kit experience or try to maybe play, you know, elevated starter kit rules to play full ASL scenarios that they are interested in. You can probably do it with some of this stuff.
Did you mention the your Discord channel for this? Or
I posted it in the starter kit Facebook group a while ago, and I had a few people interested, but they were Stu's helped a little bit, but and one other guy, I forget his name offhand, have helped a little bit. But in general, the people that have joined really haven't said anything or contributed yet, which that's fine. It's all voluntary, but down the road, we're gonna need, when I flesh out the rules that are going to be included and we have some scenarios to play a test. I've designed one already, and I know you're thinking about another, so we're going to be working on the rules need to be kind of written first, and then we have to kind of mold an example scenario around each one because you'll notice in this gray box, it's going to use kind of like old school squad leader. Stop. You've read all that's necessary to play SK scenario, whatever, and potentially full ASL scenario, whatever. So you'd bypass, stop, play this scenario, right?
yeah.
So we need the rule sets done at least at a first pass, and then maybe a board that features, like if I'm talking advanced elevation, I need a board with level 2 on it at least to do advanced elevation. So there's kind of a process to steps that we need to go through to get from rules to a board to a scenario that could work on it for these examples. The first one I want to do is bypass movement, a scenario for that.
Hmm.
Yeah. So when you're thinking of ideas for your scenario, think of, or no, maybe the first one I'm doing is snipers. Yeah, I can't remember, but yeah, when you're thinking about a scenario, think about which rule set does it want to apply it to,
Right.
advanced elevation or vehicle bypass move, whatever it is, right? Keep that in
Hmm.
mind when you're coming up with ideas. Yeah, that's it. 24 minutes, little meandering,
Cool.
but yeah, just wanted to show people on the channel. The channel's got 5,500 viewers. It's a good place to get ideas from people. The Facebook groups are good too, but a lot of people on the channel are pretty invested in what we put out, so it's a good place to get feedback from people.
Yeah.
And I invited the MMP guys to the Discord server. I've invited um, Brian and Kurt. They seemed pretty interested when I showed them the idea, but I think either they're too busy or they want to kind of disconnect themselves from the design process and just see it when it gets submitted at some level. That's kind of the way I assume they work.
Probably,
Or
yeah.
there's some kind of intellectual property pollution going on. When I was working, or intellectual property contamination, they don't want to see ideas from people in case they come up with it and there's a clash of ideas or something. Maybe that something about that's going on. I don't know, but they haven't joined the Discord server, which is fine.
Yeah. Well, maybe down the road. Never know.
Yeah. I'm just gonna plug away with the scrubbing these rules, getting a first pass at them, and we'll just design some scenarios, peck away at it, and see where it comes out on the other end. The boards, to be honest, are the easiest part for me. I've gotten down where I can do a board design in an afternoon at this point. Just whipping up. I mean, maybe there might be some wonky line of sight or whatever, but I can whip up something like this in an afternoon, rough pass.
Yeah.
So the boards are the easy part. It's the rules are not too bad. It's going to be the scenarios and the playtesting that's going to take the most, and we're going to need help with that. So people watching, we're going to be asking for help down the road. Please help us. Anything else you want to add before we stick a fork in yet another chat?
That's no, I'm good, I think.
I think it's a decent idea.
Oh yeah. Yep.
I think Starter Kit needs more love. If anything, it'll introduce more scenarios and boards to players, and they can pick and choose optional rules, which scenarios to play based on the optional rule they want to learn. You know, I think bypass is critical. It completely changes the game, infantry game. The way you
Yeah.
move, the way you
No, it's
attack, it's a huge change, but it's a really simple rule. That's what I'm trying to
uh,
introduce.
yeah, it's a good idea. I mean, I'm sure there's people that are happy with the way SK is, but if they uh gives them the option to try some optional rules,
Mm,
and then there's probably a lot of people, like I said, that are looking to go to full ASL, and this would help ease them in more. So
yeah, yeah. There'll be some people resistant to it. That's fine. People, enjoy their hobby the way they want to. But yeah, it'll give people the option to, explore the system a little bit more.
you suck, you suck. It's stupid.
Why are you doing this? It's fine the way it is. Well, things can always be improved and expanded. Okay.
Oh yeah, it's
Go ahead.
just an option.
Yep, exactly. Optional. Everything is optional. All right.
All right,
I'm done.
adios,
I'm done,
adios.
bro.
Get to the chopper!
If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like what you saw, thanks for watching, and let me know how I can do better. See you in the next video.